In the summer of 1944, the Soviet army liberated Minsk, and people learned about the fate of the Jews. The general doctor called Betty to his shed. She entered, saw an envelope in his hands, looked into his eyes, and collapsed inside. She read the letter, turning livid, then covered her face with her hands, giving a heavy sob. They promised to evacuate them with the first train, she cried in desperation and anger. I asked them just for 1 day. 1 day. I would have evacuated them on time, she sobbed. The general doctor embraced her in his arms and held her tight. No, you wouldn't have, Betty, he said quietly. The Germans moved too fast. People just didn't have enough time to leave. If you stayed, you would have been killed with all the other Jews. Then, he drew a gun and put it into Betty's hand. Go and shoot them. They are all yours. What? Betty raised her tear-stained face and looked at him wordless, having no idea why he gave her a gun. We have German prisoners in a barracks. Just go and kill them in revenge. You can tear them apart if you want. It'll help you, Betty. She had never killed anyone in her life, but she didn't question whether she could. She wasn't afraid of blood because she dealt with it all the time, taking people away from death. Betty took the gun, stepped out of the shed, and walked to the barracks with the prisoners. A guard stood at the door. Waste the bastards, he encouraged Betty, stepping aside to let her in. Betty opened the door and went inside. She expected to find the people who had killed her family with angry and cruel faces, but instead, she found them crying and sneezing, like children, but they were 17 to 25-year-old boys. They looked at her, fearing that it would be the last moment of their lives. However, little did they know that this young Jewish woman was a nurse at heart and someone who loved life for whatever it gave her. The air inside the barracks was stiff, and the smell was unbearable. There were 12 wounded German prisoners there, without any medical attention or help. Betty walked closer to the youngest as he startled away in fear. She placed her hand on his forehead as he sobbed. He has a fever, she thought, and reached to her pocket to find some cloth to clean up his wounds. Then, she realized that she was still holding a gun, so she stashed it in her pocket and walked outside. There are not enough medications and supplies for the Soviet soldiers, she thought. They won't approve if I take some for the Germans. She was passing a garbage pile and stopped there. There were used and dirty bandages thrown away. They are still in good condition. She picked them up, as the general doctor walked out of his shed. What are you doing, Betty? I have to wash it and help the sick people in that barracks, she said firmly. What? They are Germans, Betty. They killed your parents. Doctor, look at them, she said with surprise. They need medical attention. Betty, they are not your patients. They are your enemies. They killed your parents. Kill the bastards. Betty looked into his eyes, searching for the right words. They are just scared, confused, and very sick young men. Some of them don't even shave yet. And I'm a nurse, it's my responsibility to act for the benefit of the sick, remaining free of all intentional injustice. Betty. Look. There are a lot of people here whose families were killed. They are so angry. I don't think they like it. Then I have to set a good example, doctor. I'm not turning into a fascist and I won't become a barbarian, regardless of whether somebody likes it or not. Betty washed and dried the used bandages, made some medication using herbs that she gathered in the nearby forest, cleaned the prisoners' wounds, and did all she could to ease their suffering. The fellow Soviet soldiers looked at her incredulously. The Germans didn't understand her either. One of them leaned to her hand and kissed it. "I thank you so much," he said. "Oh, you are very welcome," Betty replied simply. "Can you explain to me, miss, please? We, Germans, kill Jews, and you, a Jew, help us. Why?" "I'd rather bear a grudge than take revenge," Betty replied. "But how can you do that, after all we've done?" "I'm not a killer, I'm a nurse. I'm no savage, I'm civilized," she answered. Betty searched for herbs in the forest quite often. Once, she walked there and heard a noise. Somebody was watching her. Her heart sank to her stomach. "Don't shoot," she yelled. "I'm a nurse. I'm not a soldier." "Ada!" A boy ran toward her out of the forest, yelling at the top of his lungs. "Ada! Ada!" Betty didn't move. He hugged her tight, like she was his mother. "I thought you were dead, Ada." The boy was about 11 years of age. He was dirty and thin. His clothes were ripped and covered with mud. He had no shoes, walking barefoot, and his feet were bruised and scratched. He held Betty very tightly, as if being afraid that she would disappear. "Ada! I thought they buried you," he sobbed. "I couldn't find anybody. Uncle Jacob is dead. They killed Isa, too." He sobbed and sobbed. "Everything is okay now." Betty tried to calm the boy down. Finally, he stopped crying and looked at Betty's face. "You are not Ada." He was surprised. "No, I'm not. My name is Betty." "Oh. I'm sorry. I thought you were somebody else. Ada looked very much like you." Betty's heart pounded hard. Whatever this boy just said could answer all her questions about her sister. But she didn't want to hear what he just said. "I thought you were dead. Ada looked very much like you. I thought they buried you. I thought you were dead. Ada. Is she dead?" Betty asked quietly. "Who? Ada. Do you know her?" "I think so. My sister's name is Ada, and she looks very much like me." "Betty, do you have anything to eat? I'm starving." The boy's name was Sam. Before the war, he lived in Minsk, Belarus, with his mother, father, and 15-year-old brother, Mike. The father was a doctor. Usually, in the evenings, a lot of patients came to his home office. The mother didn't work and was very sick. She had some deadly disease, was very pale, and got tired very quickly. She was in and out of the hospital all the time. One day, the father took the mother to the hospital again. However, he brought her back home soon because he received an order to go to war immediately. But before he went to the war, he wanted to evacuate his family. He took the mother to a store, where they bought clothes, food, and some other stuff for evacuation. The next morning, the father went to the city, hoping to receive permission to postpone his draft. The family waited for him all day, but he didn't come back. The mother was sick with worry about his disappearance, and the following day started to look for him. She called different people, and someone told her that they saw a bomb fall and explode right next to him. After the explosion, there was only a hole in the ground. The mother's condition worsened, so she stayed in bed, unable to get up. Mike and Sam spent the entire day packing their things into suitcases and bags. Since the Germans bombed the city, they had to leave. They asked their mother to get up. "Mom, we have to go. Please. We'll help you." She managed to get up, and they walked away from the city. They walked for 2 days, along with many other people. It was hot, and they were very thirsty. The mother wasn't able to walk very fast and fell unconscious every so often. Then, she would get up, and they kept walking as the city behind them was covered with a vast cloud of black smoke. On the 3rd day, a fleet of German motorcyclists stopped the line of refugees 100 meters in front of Sam. They spoke into a megaphone, ordering people to go back to Minsk. Some people disobeyed the order and ran away. The Germans opened fire, killing some of them, but others kept running. Mike, Sam, and their mother lay down on the ground because she couldn't run. Then, they walked back to that black ominous cloud that was rising over the city for a couple of days. They returned home. The mother lay in her bed and got up very rarely, while Mike and Sam were afraid that something terrible might happen to her. They lived a very strange life. A lot of Germans patrolled the city and didn't allow people to come outside past curfew time. If somebody broke the rules, they would kill them without mercy. Odd and terrifying posters were posted on buildings' walls everywhere. Adults stopped talking normally and whispered instead. People started to relocate wherever they could. Jewish men of 16 years and older were ordered to register for mobilization. There were not too many men in the city because the majority of the male population was drafted to the war. Some of them still stayed home, getting ready to go to the war, but the Germans occupied the city too soon, so they had no chance of escape. The male population of the city mostly included young boys, partially or totally disabled, and old men. Men didn't want to register. The Germans formed the local police that was even worse than the Germans. And the police took care of the mobilization. When the police came to the house where Sam lived, the mother got scared and hid Mike in a closet. He was a big boy and looked much older. She was afraid that they would take him away, even though he was only 15. "There is no man in our house," she said, but they didn't believe her and searched the house. They found Mike and dragged him out of the closet, beating him and cursing. They scratched his face and Mike cried. "Please. He is 15. Leave him. He is just a boy. Please let him go," the mother begged, showing the document. "Look at his birth certificate. Please." However, there was no purpose in doing that. They didn't even want to look at it. She fell down to her knees, grabbed Mike. "Please. Please. My baby. Don't take away my baby from me," she begged and cried. One of them pushed her with his boot and dragged Mike outside. She fell down and lay on the floor, sobbing. Sam cried. "Mom, please get up." "Mom," he asked her, but she couldn't. She was able to get up only in a couple of hours, and then got into her bed again. Sam woke up the next morning and called his mom, but she didn't answer him. She lay on her back with her mouth slightly open. He ran to his neighbors. "My mom died. Please come. Help us, please," he cried. One of them came. "Your mother has to be buried," she said, and then left. Sam sat next to his mom. Mom, he called her, sometimes, thinking that something could be changed. In a couple of hours, he got very hungry. He found something, ate, and then went to the neighbor again. Can you help me, please? I don't know what to do. I have a big family and too many problems of my own. I don't have time to take care of your mother's funeral. Let the men take care of it, she said. However, there were only 3 old men in different families. Sam went to every family, but nobody wanted to help him. Nobody asked him if he was hungry. Nobody offered him to stay with them overnight. He sat next to his mom the entire night. In the morning, he went to the graveyard. There was only an old man, a gatekeeper, sitting there on a bench. Can I bury my mom here? Sam asked him. The old man didn't answer at first, and Sam decided that he didn't want to talk to him. He was about to leave when the old man suddenly said, "This is a serious matter. Only adults do it, not children. A coffin costs money, digging graves costs money." "I don't have adults," Sam said. "I'm alone. My mom died yesterday and is lying in our room." The gatekeeper thought a little and then said, "I won't do anything without money." Sam didn't have money with him, so he went home to look for it. He found some, but thought it was not enough. Sam went outside to look for some wooden planks to make a coffin himself. He checked all the dumpsters on the streets, but found just one plank and took it home. The boy was hungry and tired. There was no food in the house, so he drank some water and then started to think about how to attach the plank to his mom's dead body, so it would look like a coffin. He tried to put her on the plank and tie her legs and body to it with a rope, but was not able to push the plank under the body because she was very heavy. The boy didn't know what to do, so he sat on the floor right next to his dead mother and cried. He didn't call her anymore. Sam was desperate and went to the neighbors again. "Could you help me, please, put my mom on the plank?" But nobody came. The next morning, Sam went to the graveyard again. "Here is all the money that I found in the house." Sam gave him the money. The old man counted the money. "It's not enough. Please. I don't know what to do." Sam begged. "That's all I have. Please." The old man thought a little and then gave the money back to the boy. "Come back this afternoon." Sam came back later as he was told. The old man didn't talk, just took a horse from a shed, hooked it up to a cart and they went to Sam's house. "I don't have a coffin," Sam said on the way. He was afraid that the old man would change his mind, so he added, "But I have a plank. I tried to tie it to my mom, but she is too heavy." The old man didn't answer, just smoked and cursed. After arriving at Sam's house, the old man took the plank, looked at it for a couple of seconds, and said, "Call your neighbors to help me carry her out of the house." Sam ran to his neighbors, knocking on every door, but nobody came. He went back alone. "Then, you help me," the old man said before cursing again. He tied the mother's body to the plank with a rope. "Take the plank from the other side," he ordered, but Sam didn't have enough strength to lift it. "Okay. Come over here. Let's pull it together from my side." So, they pulled the plank with the mother's body. The other side of the plank was dragged on the floor, and then on the ground. Then, they walked silently after the cart that carried Sam's mom tied to the plank, covered with a cloth. A German patrol stopped them, lifted the cloth, and said something loudly. "He is an orphan," the old gateman said, bowing. "This is his mother." The German listened scornfully and then let them go. They arrived at the graveyard after dark. The gateman had already dug a grave. He tied another big rope around the dead woman and slowly pulled her from the cart. Then, he pushed her into the grave and filled the grave with dirt. Then, he stood right next to Sam and said some prayers. "You have to remember this place, where your mom is buried," he said. Sam nodded. It was late, and Sam left the graveyard. He came back to this graveyard many times after that, but was not able to find his mom's grave, even though he thought that he would remember it for the rest of his life, and the gate man was not there anymore to ask for help.